Hello, hello. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you. Is that a thing? No, I made that up. Just kidding.
It can be. It can be a thing. It is now.
My son makes up those kind of songs all the time. So, hey, friends. Oh, I see so many great names on our list today. This is wonderful. Hello, hello. All right. I think we're good to go, Jess.
Sounds great. Well, welcome everybody. I am Jess Ray with Magnet Culture and want to begin by wishing all of you a very happy new year. Welcome to 2023. So our whole hope for you all this year is that 2023 is the year of prioritizing workforce retention to create places where people want to work. So how about you? Can I get a yes in the chat? Yes, 2023. We all know that excessive employee turnover negatively impacts the bottom line, quality of products and services that you offer. So if what you are doing right now is just not working for recruiting, onboarding, training, etc., it is time for a new approach. So there are critical strategies and tactics that have to be in place to slow that revolving door of turnover, and that is why we are here. So Cara is going to spend the next few minutes sharing her thoughts on this topic, but be sure to stay for the entire session because we do have a special offer at the end for each of you. Remember that all of our webinars are recorded and available at youtube.com/magnet culture. Today's webinar playback will be available within just a few days, which is a great opportunity for you to share this little nugget with some folks that you work with. Cara, let's dive in.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jess. All right. So where I would like to start today is asking you this question. You ready? Drum roll, please. Who owns retention at your organization? Who owns it? Who really, truly owns it? So recently I was asked to come and speak with a board of an association. And I had, the 15 board members there from all different companies. And when I asked that question, at first there were just crickets. People just weren't really sure how to answer. And then someone said, well, HR. Okay, great. So then I said, fabulous. So you have given HR the resources, the staffing that they need as a team, as an HR team, the resources, as far as time, energy, dollars, the budget. You have given them what they need as an organization. You've given that HR team what they need to solve retention issues. Or are they overloaded with all of the other HR components, right? Got to do another comp analysis, and we're still recruiting and onboarding and trying to do training and trying to do this and that and everything else that's on their plate. So in most cases, it's not usually just HR, or it isn't a person in HR. Well, then another gentleman at the board meeting said, well, I'm the general manager, so it's me. I just need to take ownership. I own retention. And I said, great. So you spend time on retention every day? You have the time and the energy and the budget and the focus to really dive into why people are leaving and why people stay and everything? And then he said, no, but I thought that was the right answer. So, and of course, every time I ask that question in workshops, somebody ultimately says, it's everybody's job, which means what? It's nobody's job, because when we all start kind of pointing to other people, then no one really owns it. So I hope that you and your leadership team, either at the end of the year or right now in January or whenever your next fiscal year rolls around, that you are talking about ownership of retention. Realistic ownership, realistic timelines. I'm going to share with you before we leave today a new tool that I created for a retention calendar, so you can set a timeline of realistic, that's our key word here, realistic initiatives you can put in place for retention, because what I hear is everybody's busy. So the reason we scheduled this call at noon Eastern is because a good chunk of folks can listen in on your lunch break. You don't have time. Probably most of you are scarfing down some food right now, which is great. I'll eat later. But we really need to make sure that the leadership team has a serious conversation answering that one question: who owns retention? A lot of groups now are putting in metrics and putting in some tracking around retention, not just that annual tracking of, what percent of turnover do we have or what percent of retention do we have, but also other metrics about, well, how many people are leaving in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, looking much more deeply at the employee survey results and what are the complaints, what are the reasons that people do stay or do go, or even why do they get frustrated, right? So hopefully you are putting more metrics into place, but that you're doing it in a very realistic way. All right. Because I've also been hosting some calls lately with especially HR leaders and healthcare leaders. And when I ask about what is your goal, what is your plan this year, they say to reduce turnover. And then we say, great. So then what initiatives are you putting in place? What are you revamping, redoing? What are you going to start, stop, or continue doing differently to get those results that you want? And most of them say their plate is already full with so many things. They're just honestly hoping. They're hoping that turnover is going to improve this year more so than actually having a plan in place to do that. And come on, y'all, you know what the definition of insanity is: doing the same thing and expecting different results the next time. So let's not do that in 2023. All right, let's not do that. This year, we're going to identify a few specific things that we have to put in place, we have to have some ownership of, and then we will see results that we haven't seen before. Okay, so some of you are the best at this. I could use you as a case study. You are already doing the things that I'm going to talk about today. And others of you are going to say, I know, Cara, I know I should be doing that. I know our company needs to do that. We just haven't yet. So hopefully this will be the light under you, that fire under you that is going to move things forward. Okay. So if we talk about what or whom has the most influence on why people stay or go, I absolutely think it comes down to two things. One is their first impression of the organization. So it is that new hire experience. When people come in, how do they feel? How are they treated? What does that communication look like with folks in those first few weeks and months, or even first few days or hours? Okay. And then the second thing that has the most influence on whether people stay or go is the leadership. And typically we are talking about those that they directly report to. Okay. Now, senior leaders absolutely play a part in that too, but the relationship that someone has pretty quickly with that frontline supervisor or manager or department director, whomever they are reporting to and learning from, that person can buffer so many of the other issues. There's scheduling issues. There's, I don't like this uniform. There's, I'm not clicking with my team. I don't really understand how to do my job. All those other things that people get frustrated by. A great leader, a great manager above that person can buffer most of those things and keep them longer. So let me dive into those two items a little bit deeper, and then I'm going to get into our prioritizing strategy and tools to help you plan for the next 12 to 18 to 24 months. Okay. So is your new hire experience effective as it is right now? Or, as I'm learning from most organizations that bring us in, have you cut that experience down to the bare bones? Because we're so busy, we're short-staffed and everybody's slammed, and we're still closing the books and everything from last year, and we're already should have been budgeting and planning for this year, but we're not even there yet. We're 2 steps behind on so many things. And so let me ask you that again. Is your new hire experience, your onboarding plan and process and execution, is it where it should be? Okay. Or is this an area that can absolutely bring great bang for your buck by working on that 30, 60, 90-day influence that you have on every new hire that's going to walk through your door? Okay. So when I ask that board about their onboarding experience, they showed signs of the entire spectrum. I talked to one leader that said, we have an extensive and recently revamped onboarding experience, and we've created all these checklists, and we have systems in place to make sure the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. And we've got buddy systems, mentoring programs. We have brought back a lot of the training time and shadowing that we used to offer new hires so they would feel comfortable in the role. We've been able to reinstate that and really bump things back up to where they used to be and or where they should be moving forward. And then we had folks at the other end of the spectrum in that same room, same discussion, that said, honestly, Cara, our onboarding is non-existent. People come in, they do the required paperwork, and we send them on their way. So they realized through our discussion and prioritization conversation that that's where they needed to start, because they were losing a lot of folks in that 30, 60, 90-day window. And now they know why. Okay. So if you do not have onboarding checklists in place to make sure that you are covering what needs to be covered, not just compliance, friends, not just compliance. Here is my list of things that I highly recommend that you put into a checklist. Okay, you ready for this? Pens up, or spreadsheets, whatever you want to work off of. Email yourself. Sometimes I do that. I email myself the to-do notes. Okay, the culture, who we are, why we do what we do, who do we serve, why are we showing up every day? Okay, so make sure you're including that culture, not just compliance, in your onboarding checklist. Then we've got to talk about policies, talk about, the rules and the guidelines around here so that I don't have to fire you, right? We got to talk about the policies. Then we talk about the procedures of the job. How do you do what you do? What are the expectations? That's a huge piece, is expectations of what we want from you while you're here. Then we need to talk about the people. And I'm saying this in chronological order, but it's not really chronological order. You have to cover all of this, and you can decide day one, week one, month one, and quarter one, kind of how to break that down for your folks. But the next piece after culture, policies, procedures, expectations is people. Talk about the people. Make sure that you're doing some team building, that they know who's on their team and do they like cats or dogs, because that's a big deal. Okay. So make sure you're covering not just the people on their team, but then the leadership structure, the organizational chart, who are some VIPs that they might see walking around or need to know who those folks are, and who do we serve? Who are those that we serve in our business? Also, are there any partners or vendors that we work with that'll be coming in and out that we need to build relationships with as well? Okay, so all the different types of people that they need to know. We got to go through processes as well. Okay, not just the procedures, but certain step-by-step processes that have to be followed. Of course, they have to learn systems. And I will tell you that has just exploded over the last 10 years, because not only do we have, our payroll system and our scheduling system, but now there's an app for everything. So we're asking our employees to sign into all these different systems, and how are they going to remember all those passwords? How are they going to remember even which system does what? Do you have an intranet that kind of guides them to those things? Because that can be very overwhelming, you all. Okay. Got to make sure that we have a plan for how we're not going to inundate them with all the systems all at once and really overwhelm them in their onboarding and training. And then finally, make sure that you have a segment of your onboarding checklist talking about resources and equipment. What do they need to do their job? And again, you don't need them to memorize these things. You need them to have access to it. So can you put that again on your intranet, or do you have an app for onboarding through an HR system or whatnot, where you can give people right at their fingertips access and information to the current org chart, to the resources that they need, to the training that you've asked them to complete when they have maybe downtime and things like that. All right. We've got to make that a little more accessible and easy, whether it is a document that's printed and has the links to things that they have to even go and type in or whatnot, or can you digitize that and make an app for it or an intranet page and things like that. Okay. So I myself right now feel a little bit of anxiety. I felt my shoulders go up here because that's a lot of stuff to take in, even though it is just the basics. Can you imagine being a new hire? Can you imagine coming in and being thrown all those things, and not just all those things, but with no organization around it? Oh, well, let me tell you about this system. Oh, well, download that app real quick. Oh, well, here, make sure you don't use that equipment because that piece is broken and you got to jiggle it a little bit. And then over here, and oh, well, and then this person's really helpful, but don't ask that person questions because either they're new or they're not very nice or whatever, right? Like all this information that people are being told from all different people, sometimes information not in the way you want it to be told, just like I said, oh, so-and-so is not very nice, right? We don't want anybody saying that. And so you can imagine today what all is on a new hire's shoulders when they come in. And recently I had a friend who just got a new job, and she said on her first day of training, she's of course sitting behind a computer doing some compliance training. And she said the girl next to her had been there 3 days and she did not come back after lunch. So that's what we're talking about, is we're just inundating and overloading folks without giving them the support to be successful in those first few days and first few weeks. So we can avoid that unnecessary turnover if we get it right. Okay, so revamping your onboarding, really paying attention to that new hire experience and focusing on that influence that comes from the first impression. Are you organized? Are you putting your best foot forward for these new hires, that they are treated well and communicated with in an effective manner? If not, it is absolutely causing you unnecessary turnover. Okay, so on to the next. We want to talk for a moment about your managers. And I'm talking managers at every single level, y'all. Okay. So we're talking about executive level all the way to frontline leaders and even team members who really lead by example. Maybe they don't have authority, they don't have a title over someone else, but they've been there a while and others look up to them, or at least listen to them or watch them and, do what they do. So we really need to make sure that we have development plans in place, because over the years we have, first of all, cut training and development in most cases for over the last 10 to 20 years. But then we have promoted people into leadership positions, even all the way up to executive level positions, without giving them the training, the coaching, the development tools that they are going to need for that next level of leadership. Okay, that next level of responsibility and that different level of communication that you have with your team. Okay, so to make sure that you have everything you need, we've got to kind of break it down into executive or senior level management, and then mid-level management, managers, directors. Break that even into 2 segments, which is your seasoned managers and directors that have been here a long time. And honestly, they probably got a lot of training 10, 15, 20 years ago in order to get to where they are today. But then we've got other mid-level managers that are newer in the role, or maybe they have been in the role 10 years, but they honestly just missed the development opportunities that had been cut either at your company or the last company they were at. So they've been doing it for a while, but they still need to fill some gaps in order to be more effective, like the ones who maybe had training quite a while ago. Okay, so you got your executive level, you got 2 different levels of your mid managers with directors and managers who are more seasoned versus more, newer or less developed, I would say. And then we have our frontline leaders, who tend to be those that we promote from the front line. And many of them have never been in leadership positions before. Okay, and then you have the added difficulty of sometimes they are managing their peers because they were working together and then got promoted. And that becomes a whole other level of communication that is a challenge for people. Okay, so what is your training plan and development plan? Sometimes it's one-on-one coaching if it's key executives, and they don't need to sit in a classroom, but they do need tools or coaching. Sometimes people have been through all the basics. I hear, oh, I've done DISC and Myers-Briggs and predictive index and communication 101 and been through all these classes. But have you been through emotional intelligence training? Have you done an EQ assessment? You know, some of those higher levels of learning as well. Or, okay, you went through generational training 5 or 10 years ago. What about Gen Z? they were barely in the workforce back then. So have you gotten updated training on the different dynamics and different types of diversity within the workplace as well? Because those things continue to evolve and change, and leaders at every level may need to fill some of those gaps. Okay. In fact, this past year in 2022, we had several organizations that had worked with us on generational or retention items, and they were asking for basic skills. They were asking for resilience classes. They were asking for how to give feedback, because those newer managers were struggling to give feedback and not have a person quit because they got critical, constructive feedback that they didn't want to hear. And so we have been trying to build out those gaps and fill those gaps with a positivity class, communication classes, resilience, emotional intelligence, behavioral styles, all these different things. So please let us know what other gaps you see. We're continuing to build out these new leadership essentials classes, we call them, that have a 30-minute video to watch about the content. Then we do a 90-minute Zoom live facilitated discussion. And then they get a 4-week action guide to help them change behavior or practice that new skill that they have been taught. So let us know what topics your leaders need to help fill those gaps. Or if you can teach that in-house, great. But you need to start analyzing what is keeping managers at those different levels from being effective at their level. And some of those needs are different depending on what their title or responsibility might be. Okay. So I know budgets are getting cut, but keep in mind, we can't do nothing, right? Is that proper grammar? You can't afford to do nothing. Even if training budgets are getting cut, at least find some free resources. Our YouTube page has a ton of videos that you can share. YouTube in general, probably you have LinkedIn Learning and other resources at your fingertips that you can at least send out some learning videos every month or every quarter to leaders at every level, so that they don't get less effective over time because the workforce is evolving around them. Okay. So think also about what metrics your managers should own, because managers absolutely do need to be a part of the retention solution. And hopefully what we do when we train them is they become retention champions for their team. And so you want to then determine with your leadership team, what metrics should managers have for retention on their team. Now, you've got to be prepared to give them the proper training, the proper tools, the time to be great managers. Sometimes we tell them, you should be a great manager, and we even train them to be a great manager, but then we overload their plate and they don't have time to be a good manager. So we have to give them the tools, the time, and the training to be great managers. But if we do that, if we support those leaders, then we can hold them accountable with retention metrics on their team of keeping people longer. Absolutely. Okay. A couple tools that you can do, that you can download if you need some free management training, or if you're in a management position and you're going, I'm just really busy. I know I could be a better manager. I know that I need to build my team because they don't really know each other very well. They don't always have each other's back. And I, as their leader, should probably work on that. There's 2 really great resources in our vault. So magnetvault.com. Magnetvault.com is where you can go. And 2 of those that I wanted to mention right now is we have a 2-minute team building list. Okay. 2-minute team building list that just has silly questions like, do you like cats or dogs? Do you like mountains or beaches? Those kind of questions that help people get to know each other. And I will tell you, if I meet a dog lover, they are my instant best friend, because I'm a dog lover. Okay. So it builds trust. It builds even just that camaraderie, so that I have something to talk with my team members about in the break room or in the hallway. Okay. So the 2-minute team building is great. Another really great tool for managers is our get to know you sheet. That's at magnetvault.com. So get to know you sheet. This is for the new hires, although you can start with everybody if you haven't done this yet. But when new hires come in, you have them fill out this get to know you sheet that does tell you about their family, their hobbies, their interests, how they want to be praised if you want to reward them for something, right? Do they prefer a gift card or public praise or private praise and things like that? So that get to know you sheet is great so that we don't make assumptions and so that we don't blanket all of our gratitude in the same way. If you think everybody wants an Amazon gift card or a gas gift card or a Starbucks gift card or whatever it is your default thank you, you might be missing the boat on some folks like me who don't drink coffee and I really don't go to coffee shops. So if I get a Starbucks gift card, that's not going to be as valuable and personal to me as an Amazon gift card or something else that I would actually use. Okay. So that get to know you sheet is great to download, share with all your managers, and they can have their new hires or their whole team fill that out so they can get to know them better. You know, you're not allowed to ask in an interview whether people have kids, are you married? Can't do that. But once you've hired them, you can then ask them on the get to know you sheet about their family and learn more about not only their significant others and their children, but also their fur babies that are very, very important today. Okay. So now with the executive level, I did want to suggest one more thing that you may want to ask your executives to do moving forward, and that is to go on a listening tour. All right. So have your executives, is there any chance that your executives have become a bit disconnected from the front line and they might be making decisions about policy and comp and benefits and procedures and systems without really understanding today's new workforce? Because let's face it, for many executives, it's been a long time since they have been on the front line, if ever even. Okay. So especially if we hired folks in from another organization and they've never worked on our front line before. So we really want to make sure that we send our executives out on a listening tour, that we can gather real stories, real information about how people feel working for us. Okay. That's a really great way to start the year, is to send those executives out to talk to the front line one-on-one. Okay. So all right, Cara, lots of things thrown at me, not to mention other things like advancement opportunities and incentives and bonuses and, you know, all these other things I've been talking to leaders about as well. I just wanted to focus today on those two biggest influencers, which is that first impression onboarding and the management development, that management effectiveness that they have. So whether it's one or both of those items, or it's other items that are on your to-do list, what do we do about it? How do we create a realistic plan? So I am a huge fan of breaking things down into more bite-sized chunks. I love project management. And so I encourage you to create quarterly retention focus areas. Okay. Quarterly retention focus areas that you can realistically accomplish in either 90 days, or maybe something takes 2 quarters and it's going to take 180 days or more to review and implement and change and upgrade. All right. So I have actually created a brand new document. You all, this is hot off the presses. I'm teaching a program up in Minnesota next week and just created this resource. So we just put it in the vault, magnetvault.com. You can download this. Okay. Are you ready? So here you go. This is your roadmap for retention calendar. It's not rocket science. Okay. It's not super fancy, but I guarantee if you print this out for your leadership team and take it to your next leadership meeting, that it will give you some clarity around how to prioritize this. Now we have a retention audit. So it's also in the vault, but it's also available at retentionaudit.com is another page you can visit. We have a retention audit that will let you ask 10 questions of your leadership team to help you prioritize. Is it leadership development we need to do? Do we need to start with a listening tour? Is it the onboarding? Is it compensation that's the biggest problem? Is it workloads, right? It will help you identify that. And I think on last year's January call 2022, if you didn't catch that webinar last year, I walked through the audit and how to use that and how to answer those questions properly. So you can check that out at YouTube. But you can go to retentionaudit.com, answer those questions, and then use this new quarterly focus area tool to break down January, February, March, or whenever your fiscal year hits. Okay. You can break it down then each quarterly focus area into 3 or 6, if you're doing a larger chunk, little sub to-do items that are realistic. I just created one for a client recently, and we started with the executive listening tour is Q1. And we broke down January, February, March into region 1, region 2, region 3, bite-sized chunks for the executives to talk to folks. So that's Q1. Got to start there and hear what we can hear. Then we went into Q2, which was create the leadership development plan. First month was analyze, what do we need? Find the gaps. Second month was figure out what classes and schedule is going to make sense for us. And then the third month was get it started, right? Launch that development plan with your leaders. Then for that particular group, they knew they needed to focus on revamping the onboarding as well, but it is not a simple task. So we put Q3 and Q4 on revamping their new hire experience. And that goes all the way from starting the first month with analyze where you're at currently, then identify some opportunities to improve, then pilot, then analyze how the pilot went, right? You see what I'm doing here? We have to take realistic bite-sized chunks. We cannot just say, well, in Q1, we're going to revamp onboarding, because who has time for that? Okay, that's a big project that you have to do, and it is going to take bite-sized chunks to get there. Okay, so I hope that breaking down this calendar document for you really helps you also set the proper expectations with the leadership team or with your HR team to not bite off more than you can chew. I just was on a workforce exchange that we lead yesterday, and someone said, we had all the directors bring their quarterly focus areas to one meeting, and we quickly realized we were way overdoing it. We had way too many projects going because, of course, if HR is working on something and operations is working on something, they're going to need each other's help. And yet they're working on their own projects. So we also need to make sure that this is cross-discipline and that each department is talking to and helping the other departments to support them in those initiatives as well. So that calendar tool can be really helpful, not just for your retention initiatives, but to lay out every department's initiatives and make sure you have the bandwidth. All right. So we talked about what we can do, a few of the top strategies that we're working with clients on today, and then what's the plan for 2023. So as we wrap up here, I'm sure you've got a lot to digest that you're thinking about. So start putting your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, and I'm going to answer those questions right after Jess shares some information with you about this Leadership Essentials program that our clients are loving right now. Awesome.
Yes, awesome job. Love that. And I love that document too, Cara. I think that'll be a really great little tool for folks to walk away with. And as Cara mentioned today, retention is, going to be a challenge this year. And we feel at Magnet Culture that we have so many different tools to help equip that path that you're headed on. As she also said, we can't do nothing. We cannot do anything, whichever one is the most appropriate there. That cutting training just simply is not an option. It would be a painful year if you do zero development with your leaders. We know that right now, training leaders is the absolute key to retention, but time is such an obstacle for companies right now. So if you can put a yes in the chat, just pull up that chat, put yes if you are ready to train your employees, but time is a barrier. So our Leadership Essentials program is a turnkey training program that provides the training your managers need to retain today's new workforce. This program trains leaders in a format that allows for bite-sized chunks to be addressed along the way instead of one big chunk all at one time. Participants will first watch an on-demand 30-minute content video at their convenience, and then they'll come together with their team on a 90-minute facilitated discussion that includes working through actual issues, what roadblocks are going to be faced, how can we apply this information to our situation, and brainstorming together. And the byproduct of that is we see some really great team building coming out of those sessions where folks maybe haven't talked to this other location or to this department in a long time. And so it really helps kind of connect all the dots to that. After that call, they have very specific tasks that have to be completed, again, on their own time within the next the 4-week period of time. So that allows for some flexibility, but also for some accountability. So you got to have both, right? We launched this program last year, and one of our first clients that implemented this program, they actually changed company policies that the team had come up with during one of those facilitated discussions as a way to retain staff and improve their culture. So big things can come out of these micro trainings, if you will. We have 2 ways that you can use this program for your organization. So the first one is private classes with teams that you build at your own organization. Or if you have a smaller team or are looking for professional development opportunities, or you've got leadership training for some new managers that are coming in, we also have our public courses, which we previously mentioned on our last webinar. We have had amazing feedback for our fall public courses in 2022. And so this year we have decided to extend this program and have released 6 different classes for this year. So to see that entire 2023 schedule, you'll want to visit magnetcourses.com. I'm going to put that in the chat for you guys. Oh, great. Oh, that's perfect. Excellent. Gotcha. So February's class, just to kind of give you a sneak peek, is all about giving and receiving feedback. So to schedule your own training program, please feel free to book a call with me. We can discuss how many leaders are we looking at, time frame. We've got about 15 classes that we have on our Rolodex. So you kind of get to pick from that menu when you do your own private courses. I will also throw my meeting link in the chat as well. So here you go, guys. You can meet with me and discuss that. And then it looks like we do have one question that's come in, Cara, and that is, how do I get my company to set more realistic retention metrics? And you touched a little bit that on the end. I think that chart's going to be a big help. But how can we get the whole company to set more realistic retention metrics?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I find is today, most executives are not aware of their blind spots. I'm choosing my words wisely here. So that's why I'm hesitating. They're not as aware of their blind spots, not just they as a leader, but even the organization, because we are all, including executives, working really hard. We are doing great work. We are trying, we are giving, we are generous. We are trying to be flexible and give more money and do everything we can. And still a lot of times the organization feels like it's not enough. We have to just keep giving and keep giving and keep giving. And yet sometimes it's as simple as, I just want my leaders to come to the floor. I just want them to come support me and get to know me and talk to me. Maybe it isn't that they want more free food or, work from home or these other assumptions that we might make. Sometimes it is just asking folks, what is it that you want or need? So that's why that listening tour is so important. And it's also why that audit is a really good tool to show your executives, because it asks the executives, it's a little more difficult than it might look at the offset, but it asks the executives, put yourself in the staff's shoes for a minute. And how do you think the staff feel about these parts of the business? And so it quickly identifies those blind spots of the new hire experience or trust, workloads, compensation issues, those types of things. So to get the executives on board, you really have to highlight what they might be missing, and what assumptions. We might have to myth bust some assumptions that they are making that no longer serve them. Okay, so we really have to have some, in some cases, difficult conversations, but that audit tool is really helpful for having some of those discussions as well. Yeah. So, any other questions? I think that's all we've got. Of course, somebody did ask about more of the focus areas. I mentioned the listening tour, onboarding, leadership development, of course, but a lot of our clients are putting in place kind of stepping stones and advancement opportunities for staff. So that could be one of your 90-day focus areas, or even 6 months worth, creating more incentives. If you've seen me speak, I talk about the carrots. What kind of carrots and small incentives are we giving folks along their career journey with you? So that could be a focus area that you spend some time on. Revamping scheduling. We just had a workforce exchange the other day where we were talking about new shifts, new start and end times. Where exactly does the coverage need to be in place as far as, what hours of the day are busiest and need the most hands, and then shifting some of our start and end times, splitting shifts where people might want to work a few hours here and come back later in the day. There's all kinds of flexibility and creativity happening in the scheduling space. So analyzing and revamping scheduling might be a whole focus area project as well. All right. So awesome. And reminder, you just need to go to magnetvault.com to get to all the resources that we mentioned. And the specific ones I mentioned were the get to know you sheet, the 2-minute team building, and the new roadmap for retention calendar. So there should be a list once you get into magnetvault.com, then you should be able to find each of those downloads. All right. So thanks everybody for a wonderful day. Good luck in 2023. Please reach out if you have any topic ideas we need to cover in future classes, and we'll see you on the open courses. So bye, friends.